Hi there, and welcome to Mini Fights. I'm Brian, and today I'm going to take you on an odyssey of comic book terrain painting. We're going to repaint together 5 trucks that I purchased on eBay. They're just the regular toys you would buy at a drugstore. They're not very high quality toys or, really intended for terrain. But by repainting them, we're going to make them fit the aesthetic that we want, and they're going to work awesome for Marvel Crisis Protocol, Batman DC Comics, maybe even like Infinity or other colorful science fiction type games. This is a very attainable technique and anybody can do it, but the one thing you're going to need in your arsenal is an airbrush. So this is an airbrush specific technique. We're going to use regular brushes a little bit as well, but it is almost all airbrush to get this done. Let's check it out. So first thing we're going to do is just brush the dust off these trucks. They've been sitting on my desk for a little while. Once we've done that, we'll just kind of give them a quick inspection. I see these as size 3 in Marvel Crisis Protocol, and they're either an ambulance or a box truck. It's kind of hard to say. It's sort of a generic shape and size, but I think they work right at size 3. They're a bit bigger than a car and a bit smaller than, a tank or another size 4 thing in MCP. So off camera here, I had applied a quick coat of sandable black automotive primer to the trucks. Now, I'm sure you've all rattle canned some things before with primer. You never really quite cover the whole thing, and sometimes the primer is kind of more like a charcoal color than like a true black. So my first step here is I took some Vallejo Air Black, thinned it out with Windex and Flow Improver, and now I'm shooting all the trucks with a nice even coat of black to fill in a few gaps that I missed and get them closer to an actual true black. I do that to all 5 trucks, and now the next step is to lay in the first color on the windshields. Now we're going to paint these windshields in a way that's kind of that like really comic booky reflective style. It's going to be a gradient that goes from like a dark blue all the way to a white. So I lay in the base coat, the dark blue, on all 5 trucks, and now we're going to shoot about anywhere from 1/3 to 2/3 of this colored blue. And that starts the beginning of our nice airbrush fade, and we're going to do that to all of them. I kind of varied a little bit. There's some of them kind of transition diagonally. Some of them are more of like a flat transition, and you'll kind of see how they come together organically here as you do all 5. The next step is shooting a light blue, and just in kind of a smaller area, so we maintain our transition and we don't hit the transition edge between the first 2 colors. So now we've got 3 colors in there, and we've got a really big value transition from almost black to getting close to white. The very last step is we hit them with a little dot of white in the very bottom corner, and that is going to finish up our windshield prep. And this is our final result for the windshields. You can see as we get them all laid out that they're pretty uniform. There's a little variety in the sort of where the gradient is applied, but generally speaking, they look pretty close. I lay out all the colors I used here in case you want to do this yourself, going from darkest to lightest. I'm also going to show at the end of the video all the paints I used as well. And as you can see, we got a good amount of overspray on areas that are not the windshield itself. So I just quickly thin out that black with a little bit of water and apply a quick coat over all the overspray areas. And I do that to all 5 trucks. That's gonna clean them all up, and now it's just the windshield that's got paint on it right now. And real quick, I'm just gonna show kind of my other terrain so you can get an idea of this style applied to different kinds of models. The first one was an MCP taxi. That's a Dodge Viper that's been repainted. This is a Nissan GTR. Probably seen these in battle reports if you've watched my battle reports. This is one of my tanks, I call it a Hydrolite tank. It is, I believe, it's not Vietnam era. I want to say it's Korean War tank. It's actually just a toy tank, like an army tank, that green plastic that's been repainted. And this guy is the cream of the crop. This is Truck Truck. Truck Truck is a size 4 dump truck. Another eBay toy that's been repainted. A little bit of conversion work done to it to fill the bed so it has a nice flat spot to stand on. You know, as you can see from some of the scale of the Primaris Marine I put on there in the car. And that's where these trucks are going to fit as far as scale. So you got a bunch of size 2s there on the right, size 3 truck and light tank, and size 4 giant truck, dump truck. Getting back to our actual painting now that our paint's dry, we're going to mask off the windshields that we just painted. Now, I highly recommend using this specific masking tape. It's Tamiya brand 10mm tape. Now the width of it doesn't matter. You can use whatever you want for whatever project you're working on. But the yellow Tamiya tape is very forgiving and for me, has almost never damaged paint as I removed it. And a lot of the blue painter's tape that are for more traditional home improvement projects, things like that, can be very damaging to miniature level kind of acrylic paint when you peel it off. So I used to kind of try to get the blue stuff to work. Once I discovered the yellow Tamiya, I've never looked back. That's all I buy for miniature painting stuff. So we've masked off the windshields, and I threw a little tape on the inside to fill those open windows so we don't spray colors on the inside of the interior of the truck. We're now laying in a coat of Vallejo Gray Violet. Now this is kind of a warm gray tone, and you can see I'm sort of applying it in a zenithal fashion where it's kind of like it's from an above light source. I'm going to vary the application of this color over the 5 trucks. I'm not going to show all of them here. Some of them I apply a lot, and some of them I apply just a little bit, and that depends on how dark the next color is going to be. On most of the trucks, I then move on to doing a pure white spray. Now this is kind of the points of light, and this is an additional layer of highlighting on top of the gray violet. And you can see I'm sort of arbitrarily picking some points of light to hit. Sometimes it's corners, sometimes it's middle. Miniature painting light logic is sort of kind of an art more than a science. So you can kind of pick where you want light to hit. I kind of vary it over the trucks. You know, kind of depends on, do you want a single light source or multiple light sources, that sort of thing. You can see on this truck, this is the last one I did, I'm applying a much more white, and that's because this one is actually going to end up being an off-white color when we're finished with it. So this guy, I wanted him as light as possible. And now we're getting close to where the magic really happens, and that's picking specific colors that have transparent or semi-transparent pigment. And you can see as I spray that over the white on the little turntable there, how the colors underneath show through. That's one of the reasons I chose this color. We're spraying it over an underpainting that creates light and shadow. Now we're adding color. This is Vallejo Ferrari Red. It's awesome. It's one of my favorite red colors to paint in this way. And we're gonna go ahead and just kind of go around the model, applying a single coat, and then kind of just working our way around again. If I stop here, it's a little blotchy looking. There's too much value shift in the underpainting, but as we apply more and more red layers, kind of like looking through nearly transparent glass, like, you know, stained glass layers that you're stacking up, it slowly gets a little more opaque and shows a little bit less of the underpainting through. And that's what we want. We want a little more consistency, but we want some modulation in the color, some light to dark shift, but not as much as as it looked that first layer we put on. And we're gonna do the same thing with this truck. This one's gonna be all green. This is, I believe it's called Zinc Green. It's another Vallejo Air color. I think I shoot mostly Vallejo Air in this video just because it's kind of convenient. You don't have to thin it a ton. And this paint is also another fairly transparent pigment. As you can tell, you can still see quite a bit of the modulation of that underpainting coming through. And that's really the magic of this technique. You're letting the primer and then the quick zenithal layers you put in there do most of the work. And same thing, we don't really do 2 full separate coats, but we kind of go around a couple of times while it's wet and just build up that opacity where it's just a little more opaque than that first layer, which looks a little too thin and a little unrealistic. The modulation looks much better the way we just did it. And moving on to our third truck, this one is going to be kind of a orangey yellow, we'll call it yellow-orange, I guess would be the technical term. Again, you see the underpainting coming through too much and it really changes that yellow into sort of a greenish. And that can be a technique that you can use, but we're looking for just a little bit of that. So we're gonna, again, go around a couple times, make sure that we've built up enough paint that we get some light and shadow through, but not as much as we're seeing right here. And you can see as soon as that second layer goes on, it starts to look much better, much more sort of makes more sense light-wise. And the last step on this particular truck, this is really the only one I did this on, was I applied just a little bit of a pure yellow to some of the light areas, just to build back up to a little more of a yellowish color. So what about the other two trucks? One is going to be black, and one is going to be off-white. And unfortunately, I forgot to film the off-white color going on, so I did the one truck earlier that I had put a ton of white into, I sprayed it with sort of a bone white color. And then the last truck is just black with the gray-violet highlighting that we applied with the airbrush, plus a layer or two of weathering. And that's what we're going to get into right now. So here's my black truck with the gray-violet highlights. It needs a little bit of color added to it. To do that, we spray a little bit of a warm brownish color around the wheel wells, just to simulate kind of the normal dust that gets stuck on the side of vehicles. We're going to do the same thing to the off-white, sort of the ambulance, I guess you'd call this one. And now we're going to move on to a layer of weathering applied by brush, or more specifically, a chunk of foam. So we're going to rip a little piece of foam, and you can use the foam that comes in miniature blister packs if that's still a thing. Do they still do that? I don't know. I think this is some foam from maybe an old bag I used to use to transport miniatures, something like that. Find yourself some kind of tightly woven foam. And we're going to apply this to all 5 models because the weathering, we're going to apply this to 4 of the models, not the black one. This weathering will show up on all the other colors just fine. You're just going to sponge on a dark brown of your choice. You kind of see I put it mostly around wheel wells, corners. This is an entirely to your own taste. I think the comic aesthetic probably doesn't really lend itself to tons of weathering, but it is entirely your own adventure and you get to choose it. And you can see that the color we've chosen, because it's darker than these 4 colors, stands out pretty well on all of them. And it's a warm tone, but it's not an egregiously like reddish brown. So it fits pretty well, I think, all around. So really happy with the way that came out, especially considering the minimal amount of time that technique takes. The main thing I would say is just remember to rotate your little chunk of sponge in your hand so that the pattern of weathering you're putting on the vehicle changes a little bit. Now we're just going to go ahead and rebase coat a few areas of all the trucks. So we painted up the grille and the headlight lenses, and now we're just going to go ahead and this is just a thinned out black paint, just covering up the wheels again from all the overspray from the other stuff we've done so far. It's really nice to be able to just go back over areas with thinned out black paint and have it cover nicely. It's just like one of the nicest things about painting with black is how quickly it covers almost every other color. And as you can tell, even obviously this is time lapse, but I'm moving pretty quickly here as I redo this. This whole step maybe took 10 minutes to entirely repaint all the wheels on all 5 trucks and the grills. Now, here's a little bit of a comedy piece that I decided to keep in here. You probably noticed the trucks trying to roll away from me as I was spraying them in the booth. That's because these are toys that when you pull them back, they store the energy, and then when you let go, they'll move forward. So those rear axles have like a, you know, a mechanism to drive them forward, and they kept driving off of my little turntable here. So threw another layer of glue on them. Used wood glue this time instead of super glue, and that seemed to work better. So after that dries, I go back and I carefully spray a little bit of white centered in each highlight, or excuse me, in each headlight. I do that to all 5 trucks. Now I get a really nice transparent yellow. Now this is very critical that the paint here is a transparent paint, so you can kind of, you know, on your palette, spray it over some white and make sure that that light shows through for whatever color you chose. When you do an object source lighting like this, and you're airbrushing it on especially, you need a very transparent paint. Yellows typically are pretty transparent, so this is an easy one. I think on this particular truck it looks the best because you can see the yellow kind of hitting the white of the paint around the lenses, the headlights really nicely. But as you can see, you know, this is a really quick technique and it instantly gets you some nice pop. So you can see them there all with their headlights on, glowing in the darkness, looking pretty sweet. Decided to pull out some masking tape. This is always fun to go ahead and kind of see what your initial step of airbrushing the windshield, how that jives with the colors you've chosen for the vehicles. It's super satisfying to peel that off. Just be careful, peel it off slowly. If you got some fancy tweezers like I have, use that. The edge of a knife can work, just, you know, go slow. Don't yank paint off in a quick movement like you pull a band-aid off, just do it gently. So this is another fun weathering step, and there's a lot of ways to do this. I just used some Army Painter Strong Tone, which is like a brown wash, similar to GW's Devlin Mud or whatever, Agrax Earthshade, whatever they call their current one. You basically are just going to take a flat brush like I've got there. That's like an artist flat brush. A newer dry brush from GW or something like that would work the same. You just need a flat end on it, and you're just going to basically streak it down the side, and you got to do this in one confident downward motion, hopefully straight downward and not too curved. Sometimes the lines will get a little curved on this, but generally speaking, you find areas that would have those sort of weathery drips, like the top edges of the truck, that little side window, things like that. And again, it just depends on how much weathering you want to put on there. I think this is most effective on the white and the lighter colors, but it does add a nice little extra bit of visual detail on all the colors. And now we're just going to finish up by putting some highlights on the wheels. So I kind of use the flat brush to lay in a gray, a kind of a medium gray. Sort of a dry brush, sort of an overbrush if you want to call it that. Just kind of let the brush gently slide across the face of the wheel and pick up some details. I then go in with a lighter, nearly white gray, and apply just like a little bit of edge highlighting here. And this is, again, seasoned to your own taste. I personally don't think it's worth building up fancy layers of edge highlighting and those kind of higher end techniques that you would use on your miniatures on terrain. Terrain gets beat up. Terrain is often, it's just not really the focal point of your battle. I think having some bright colors and good contrast and some visual interest is important, but I don't think sitting there and meticulously hand highlighting the rims of the wheels of your terrain really makes a lot of sense, at least to me. But again, to your own taste, do with it how you will. And last step is just applying the same methodology to the windshield wipers. I went back and picked them out in black. Now just give them a little dab of gray here and there to give them a highlighted look, make them pop a little bit more visually. And that's the final step. So we've spent about, in real time, maybe about 3 hours. I think the video is about 20 minutes long. And I think this is 3 hours well spent. And I hope you do too. And if you like these, well, I'm going to give them away. here's how you enter to get one of these sweet trucks. First off, you got to be in the continental US. You got to like this video. You got to subscribe to the channel. And you got to like us on Facebook. Please see additional details below the video. There's going to be some links and things down there for you to click. But that's the gist of it. So you want to win one of these? Give us some likes, give us some subscribes. We love it. It helps more people see the channel. And you might win a truck. These are all the colors we used in this project. You are welcome to replace them with colors of your own. Just bear in mind the discussion about transparency and covering the underpainting as we had earlier. Make sure you're picking colors that have the opacity for the effect you'd like. Thanks so much for watching, guys. It's been really fun to do this video. Hoping to do more painting content here as we're all stuck at home. Hopefully you enjoy it as well. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.